Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to PACCon, day 2. Woohoo! Today's session that you are in is going to be good and interesting, and it features our own Megan Edelman from Platt, our own Hannah Lottenberg from PAC and DAC, and our wonderful partner, Andrea Alhadari Patton, who does numerous things at Penn, but mostly works with development and university life alumni relations. So she's a whiz at social media and marketing and presentations, and so I think you'll enjoy the show, the session, I mean. Sorry, force of habit. Any questions, just pop in the chat at any time. I'll be keeping an eye on it, but first we'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. So just let me get my screen ready for you. We really want to get in the habit of doing a land acknowledgement for most things that we do. Connor did a wonderful session on it yesterday, and we're hoping that PAC will use these more and take it seriously and try to understand the needs of the Indigenous community. So I have it up so you can read along, but we as Platt House, the PAC Shop, and PAC Exec want to begin with voicing of gratitude to the past and present generations of Indigenous people for the opportunity to live our lives in this space. Although we're on the internet right now, many of us are living and learning in Lenape-Hoking. We currently call this space Philadelphia. It actually stretches from Pennsylvania up through New York. It's a very large territory. We currently call, but this land was stolen from the Lenape tribe, the original stewards of this land. If you do not know the name or story of the people whose land you occupy, you can find the information and many other great resources at nativeland.ca. And I'll post that link in the chat. And with that, we are going to get started. I'm going to turn it over to Megan.
Hello, everyone. Laurie, thank you so much for that introduction. I'm going to steal the screen share and put up our PowerPoint for today's presentation. So you've joined us for marketing and social media. This is always an important tool to be using for getting the word out there about your shows and your activities. And now while we're on this virtual platform, it's more important than ever. So thank you so much for joining us today. And as Laurie said, if you have any questions throughout, please drop them in the chat and we'll be sure to address them. So a little introduction. Andrea, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name's Andrea Alhadari Patton, she, her, hers. Like Laurie said, I support Platt House and all the other departments that make up VPUL with anything that has to do with fundraising, volunteers, alumni relations, and in my role, I'm also a member of the VPUL communications team. And before I came to Penn 2.5 years ago, I was a director of communications and events for an international organization. So while I don't manage social media today, it was a big part of my professional life for many years. I used to edit a magazine as well. And so today I will be sharing my perspective from the engaging with alumni or constituencies outside of the student base in all your social media plans.
And I'm Megan Edelman, also she, her, hers. I'm the Associate Director at Platt Student Performing Arts House. I typically do most of our communications, marketing, social media. A lot of that is resharing your marketing, just trying to get it out there on additional platforms, trying to get the word out about the various student performing arts activities we have on campus. And I constantly learn from my two fellow presenters here today. So I'm very grateful to be working with them on this.
And I'm Hannah. I'm a senior in the college studying sociology and communications. I am the Dance Arts Council Chair on PAC Exec. And I'm also on Strictly Funk Dance Company. I actually ran their social media for a semester, as well as I'm on the Stimulus Children's Theater Board, and I also run their social media. So, you know, I've had some experience running, you know, group social media. So they asked me to come on to, you know, give some advice about what that looks like. But yeah, I'm really excited, and please feel free to ask questions and things like that. We're really just doing this for all of you. So yeah.
And so going off of what Hannah said, throughout this presentation, if you have questions, if something comes up, please drop them in the chat. Lori is going to be our chat moderator. And a couple other things. So we've put footers on a bunch of the PowerPoint slides with just random tips that didn't feel like they fit in a slide specifically, but we thought that they were worthwhile. And so in social media, we're also going to include email in there because we're just thinking about the digital space. But before we, or as we go into the next slide, there's more than 20 of you. So there's more than 30 of us here. So it would take too long for everybody to introduce themselves, but I'd love if you could drop into the chat a little bit about you, perhaps like why you're here. So, you know, is it because of your position? Are you just interested in social media? Are you interested in starting an alumni initiative in terms of communications, just so that we can get a better sense of how to tailor the rest of the presentation to what you're looking for. So please feel free to drop that in. And then Megan, if you want to go to the next slide, that would be great. So basically the best way to kind of start this, and again, Hannah's going to really, Hannah and Megan are going to do a great perspective or a great job from the student perspective. I'm here to provide from the alumni perspective. So I thought it would be important to start with how Penn identifies alumni engagement of its alumni. And so they have, you know, everything is nicely branded, of course, at Penn, but they cluster it into 3 different sections: go, give, lead. So are you going to events? Are you giving? So are you giving of your time? Are you making a donation, or are you leading? Are you in a leadership role of some kind within the university? Are you on a board? Are you president of an alumni club? And so that is really the focus that Penn does for all of its alumni communications. Beyond just educating alumni on what's happening at Penn, the purpose is threefold to engage alumni. And that's something that you could potentially take for yourself. What are 2 or 3 goals when we are creating a communication plan for social media, for email, for our website? What do we want the call to action or the outcomes to always be? Whether it is just your general web presence, it is social media platforms, it is a newsletter. If you're having virtual events, right, that's pretty much all we are doing these days. And then giving opportunities if your group happens to have a gift fund or endowment. You can move on to the next slide, Megan. So we've clustered these into 3 different categories. The first being just optimizing your web presence. So if you'd like to skip to the perfect. So we thought it might be interesting to kind of highlight. Now I obviously chose like the colleagues I work with versus student groups. That way I don't nitpick at anybody who might be in the audience's website. The number one thing when building out a website, which while might not be where your first instinct is to go, for alumni or donors or general audiences, prospective students, a website should be your catch-all to hold everything. And so I wanted to highlight a great example of the LGBT Center's website that really hits a lot of points. And so just briefly, a couple bullet points that you can see. They follow the 2-click rule pretty well. So if you have information, like information to a show, information because you are having auditions, it should never take someone more than 2 clicks to get to where they need to go. That's actually a fundraising rule. It should never take someone more than 2 clicks to get to the part where they're putting in their credit card information to make a donation. But that's something that should apply for anything you do online, whether it's social media or a website. And making sure that everything is clearly visible on your homepage. So if you have multiple social media platforms, your homepage of your website should link to all of those. And vice versa, thinking about your social media platform, is there a link to everything else that you have? Or do I need to Google if I want to search how to find you on the web through multiple platforms? But Hannah, do you want to talk a little bit about, you know, tiny URLs and QR codes?
Totally. Okay. So yeah, I think the biggest principle that I've learned is that people don't want to look too hard for links and they want to make it as easy as possible. So 2 things that I've been using, which are also really, really helpful both for websites and for social media when you're promoting different events. Tiny URLs, which is super easy. All you do is you go to the tinyurl.com, completely free, and then you basically essentially put the URL you want to change, and then as long as it's not used, you can change it to like a / literally anything. So like, I don't know if you all noticed, but for PACCon, it was tinyurl.com/PACCon 2020 registration. That's really easy to remember. So if you tell people like on an Instagram, like all you have to do is go to tinyurl.com/show tickets. Like that is so much easier for people to remember when they're putting in their web browser instead of a like Zoom/J, you know, like much easier. And even easier than that is QR codes, also free to make. You can just look online and there's a ton of websites that do it. You again put that URL in, and then I don't know if you all know, but you basically just open up your camera on your phone and it'll redirect to the page. So both of those are really easy ways to make sure that people are like able to get to your links really easily and not super confused about what's going on. So I definitely then, as it says, make Zoom video links super clear and obvious, especially in a virtual world. Like we just want to make it super easy to find anywhere you're going. It should be right there, super easy to click, and that's that.
And something with links, which I think is also important, is making sure that links are, you don't have dead links on your website or your social media platforms. So I am somebody who likes to be very organized about what is static and what is my static content that never changes, right? Like the introduction on my website, the bio on my Instagram page. But sometimes we like to do things, and we'll get to a little bit later, like link in bio, or we have an events tab on our website, and then we forget to update it. And I'm thinking like prospective students, right? High school seniors right now that are starting to seriously think about Penn, they're interested in the performing arts. They might Google student performing arts. They might know of, you know, STEM or Bloomers or just, you know, the a cappella like scene at Penn, but they might not know more than that. And so the Penn website leads them to Platt House leads them to all these student groups, and they find themselves on your website or social media platform. You want to make sure that everything you're providing is the most up to date. And it's okay to say information coming soon. So for me, I actually used to keep a list. So I had an Excel spreadsheet that I kept private, that had passwords, you know, login information. And on there, I also had a tab that said like active web pages. And so for me, that was, what are the web pages that are constantly changing, whether it's semesterly, monthly, annually. So I knew every couple months to go on there and check and make sure all the information was up to date. That's also just, my recommendation would also be to just Google your group and see what comes up on the first search page of Google. That's super important. Like I used to Google at my old job, my name, and I would find that my name and email was still connected on the first page of Google to things I did in college at that time, like 6 or 7 years ago. And so that is a great way of seeing what is audiences outside of Penn. I know some people had written in the chat, like interested in connecting with the community beyond the university. That's what these people are seeing. They don't know where to go and what to look for. Another great way to see if your design is intuitive is ask your parents, right? Someone who has never looked at your website or social media platform before, sit them down in front of your computer and say, I would like you to find the page that has information about auditions for our show, and see how long it takes them to find it. Or just put them in front of Google and doing that. And that's a really great way to see, like, is what I think actually translating to an audience that might be foreign to the way that we operate. So I always think like parents, siblings, you know, they're a great test dummy for seeing if you're on the right path to an intuitive online presence. So we can go on to the next slide.
I just have a quick.
Oh yeah, Megan, go for it.
To jump into. So one thing is, Andrea mentioned the link in bio and making sure that's fresh. In addition to that, Andrea actually taught me something that was like life-changing for me. So with Instagram, obviously like links are a little bit more challenging because you can't really click on a link in a post. So a lot of times people refer to link in bio. A helpful tool is Linktree, which is you put your Linktree link, which could be like Linktree/Platt House, for example, is ours. And then it just has these little bubbles, and each bubble has a new link that you can send to. So you have that one link in your bio, but it'll forward you to upcoming auditions or upcoming event, or take a look at this video we made, or all of those different things. So you can just refer people to the link in your bio on Instagram and then link to many, many different things. Also, though, you don't want to have too many bubbles on that page, because then people won't scroll through so much. So just keep that content fresh as well. Excuse me. A note about QR codes. I believe with iPhones, there's the QR code scanner is already built in. With Androids, you can just go to the Play Store. I have an Android phone and look up QR scanner, and that's a free app you can download, which is super easy. It's like right on your phone, and then boom, you point it at the QR code, and it'll take you to the link you're referring to. And then also to the note, Andrea talked about keeping your website current. I know I have, for Platt House's website, a lot of recurring things that might need to be up for like February of each year, but then gone for the rest of the year. So I also keep a page that I call, it's like a Word doc that just is called Web Content Removed. And I write, you know, what page it's under, the date I removed it, and then maybe it's about like our upcoming awards, and I have all that language that I know I'm going to use again next year, so I don't have to reinvent the wheel when I'm going to repost that. So for groups, you could do that with like auditions. If you know you have all these different elements you have to cover, just keep that text stored somewhere so you know you can use it again when that comes up for you and recurs. Okay, moving on.
So the next section, which is the meatiest part of our presentation and the one that most of you said you're here for, is really just engaging various target audiences and constituents through social media. So we put some fun graphics up here, and it is, right now, it is an interesting time. I really tried to think of like a better adjective. I'm so tired of saying unprecedented times. But while I'm sure you've seen some type graphic similar to this, like I love the one where it's like the Starbucks experience. What does it look like on Instagram, right? On Instagram, it's like, here's a trendy photo of my Starbucks drink. On YouTube, it's my video review of my Starbucks drink. On LinkedIn, it's me talking about how I love the values of Starbucks as an organization, and that's why I'm supporting their business. And so I always think it's important to put in here, because sometimes when we step into social media marketing roles, we think one size kind of fits all for every platform. And that's not necessarily the case. And I think it varies group to group and who you're trying to market to. The same photo or the same video can exist on multiple platforms, but should serve different purposes and have different messages. And so, for example, if you are, promoting your next show, you might have something with a lot more meat and details on Facebook, where your alumni tend to live, rather than how you might be marketing it to people who are buying tickets for a show on your group's page, but you might be using the actual Facebook event site to actually market tickets. Twitter is not a huge way of marketing for groups, I think, on Penn's campus, but it's something that is worth looking at. Like, what platforms exist that maybe haven't been touched for a couple months? Like, do we have a Twitter that its last tweet is from 2018? Do we want to close it up? Do we want to simply link it to another platform, so when we post automatically to, Facebook, it posts to Twitter? Do I want to set an alarm for myself to go on it once a month and just retweet a couple things? And I think that's really important, because if you have, I'm not sure about you, but if I come across someone's account and I look at the last post they had and it's from a couple months ago, I tend to just unfollow them. I'm like, this account isn't active. I don't know if they've moved on to a different account, if they just have taken a break from social media, but it's important to have accounts that are active and healthy. And also in terms of how are people using social media and when are they on social media? So what we would typically show you is like, when is the best time to post on various platforms? COVID-19 has kind of thrown all that for a loop, because people are home all the time. And so we're typically, it might say for certain age ranges, 8 a.m., 12:30, and 9 p.m. or after 9 p.m. are the best times for optimal engagement, because it's people, you know, laying in bed or getting ready for the day, people on their lunch breaks, or people at night when they're done for the day and they're kind of just scrolling before bed or before going out. There is, like, to me, like, every hour of every day feels like 2 p.m. and every day feels like a Monday while we are in quarantine and kind of working and studying from home. So it's really going to be important to you to pay attention. For example, Instagram and Facebook, they have, if you switch to a business account, you have all the analytics and the algorithms. Look at what time and day people are engaging with your post most and make it a point to be posting then. Look at your demographics, right? If you have if more than 50% of your audience is on the West Coast and you're on the East Coast, you want to adjust your time frame for those people. And, you know, we all know and have heard of, like, the algorithms from multiple social media platforms and how they work well for some people, and for others, you sometimes feel like you get screwed. But paying attention to the data and how people respond is going to be one of the best ways to combat that. Hannah, do you want to share anything from your experiences on the platforms?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just really important, especially for student groups, to, like, think about what platforms you're using for what reason. So, like, as Andrea was saying, like, Facebook is a really amazing place. I know everybody knows this, but, like, changing your profile picture to, like, promo for different shows, like, that's always fun. Cover photos is promo. Like, I feel like Facebook has really turned into that, like, promo place, and, like, a place where pretty much it's, like, the standard to create a Facebook event for pretty much anything that's going on with a show. So, like, there's that. And then Instagram is a great way to, like, show off what your group does and things like that. And then I think YouTube is really important, because if someone's going to, like, Google your group on YouTube who's interested in the group, your YouTube should reflect sort of what it is about your group that you want to highlight. So, like, whether that be, like, dance videos, singing videos, like, behind the scenes, like, what the different branches of your group do, et cetera, like, you want to make sure that each platform you're on is reflecting, like, what you want to show, and, like, different, you know, means like that, which I think on the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about TikTok, but, like, TikTok is, like, a very new platform and is a really fun one to use for more of a, like, behind the scenes, like, what is your group like, you know? So that's a really fun one to look at. Like, I know a couple groups that I'm in have been experimenting with that in terms of, like, funny things that you do in rehearsal, or, like, funny things that you do with your group to sort of get the character of your group, but, like, that's not something that you're going to particularly get from Facebook. So, I mean, it's really just about thinking, like, what works best for your group and what you're going to put on each platform. And, you know, super easy, as like, you can go Facebook and Instagram in one click. Like, you can just upload to both platforms at once. So that's really cool if you want to just cover those two platforms. But again, it's thinking about what platforms you're the most active on, which ones you want to use, and what you're using them for, with keeping in mind, like, again, demographics that look at it, like, what do prospective students especially want to see, etc.
And I think one more thing that I want to share that Hannah just kind of reminded me is when you are thinking about the visuals that you're putting on your platform. So a couple tips, like, there is a dramatic increase in post engagement when the photo that you use has eyes, so like a person's face. And so that's just something, if you're thinking of, like, artsy photos or flat lays or just a graphic, just being more mindful of how much engagement are you hoping to get out of this post. And I think it should be no surprise that any post that you put on any social media platform should have some type of image. You should never just be putting text. But thinking about that, and then again, just one more, I feel like I didn't really push it at the earliest. Don't neglect platforms just because your main audience doesn't use it as much. So sometimes I work with student groups who are planning, you know, a big milestone anniversary is coming up, right? And so they want to bring alumni back to campus. But if your alumni are not on Instagram and that's really been what you've been focusing on, or you've been only promoting your shows and different things on your personal Facebooks, but not your group's actual Facebook page, and you're not emailing alumni and keeping them updated, it's going to be a lot more difficult for them to show up. So thinking about where do my different audiences live, and then making sure that I don't neglect them, even if they maybe don't get as much attention as other platforms do. I think is just really important, because you might not care about it this academic year, but you might have like your 50th anniversary coming up next year. You can go to the next slide, Megan. Thank you. So Hannah, you were talking about TikTok.
Yeah, no, I mean, TikTok is a great platform. I think it's so fun to like experiment with. I think TikTok is funny because people use it for many different reasons. I don't know what people's feeds look like, but you know, some people have really, really made it work in terms of like sharing information. It's very easy to go viral very fast. Honestly, my advice is like, if your group is into it, like just try it out. Make a fun video of like your group members, especially like so fun to do, like, you know, TikTok dances, like funny things like that. If it gains traction and you're enjoying it, keep doing it. Obviously, sometimes it's just not for you, but I don't know. I think it's a fun platform to play with, especially because there are so many users. And I think one that's really cool is YouTube, because you can put show videos, especially right now for people to get like an idea of your group. YouTube's really great. And then I think we all know about Facebook and Instagram, but again, as sort of Andrea was saying, like try as many platforms as you want, see what works, keep working on them, even if you're not getting a huge audience. Like I think the more that you can spread out on different platforms, the more traction that you'll get.
And something, you know, I think something that's really great about TikTok is that you can easily download the videos, right, and repurpose them elsewhere. And so something that I think is worth noting when you're trying to grow your social media audiences, don't just, you know, if you have a Facebook group for your alumni, right, and all your alumni get added into that Facebook group, think about like putting a post directly from your Instagram so that it links them back to your Instagram so they follow you on your Instagram. Or when you upload a video to YouTube, don't just upload it to YouTube, but then say, how can I schedule out using the features that already exist? Like Facebook has great scheduling features. How can I schedule these out so that next week and then 3 months from now, this video gets re-promoted and is easy content for you that you can recreate, but in a different way through various platforms. I think other things that are just important and we forget about, but I think worth noting. So everybody is very protective, I guess is maybe the word, of their Instagram grid, right? Your main feed. We're not necessarily going to put like a show graphic or poster on our feed, but we'll put it on our stories. Because our stories are much less curated. And so if you are the social media manager for your group, whenever you post something, like being mindful of saying like, do we have a group meet? Am I going to include a link to say, hey, everyone, I just put this on the STEM feed. Please share this post directly to your stories. Or if you want like tagging different group members, if they're featured in the photos, in the stories, that way they can reshare them, because you can only reshare stories if you're tagged in them, but you can reshare a feed from a public profile. And so I think things like that are really important, of not just saying it's my job as a social media manager to have great social media, but also saying, all right, every time I put a post up, I'm going to remind people in my group that this new post has been up, directly with the link saying, please share this. Like, please help promote it. Please comment on it, right? So the more comments a photo has, the more it shows up on everyone's feeds, right? I think the statistic is like you see less than 10% of the accounts that you follow on your Instagram and Facebook feeds. And so making sure that the more a photo is being engaged with, the more it's going to show up on other people's feeds. And so encouraging and reminding your group. I've gone on plenty of group accounts just to kind of prep before this meeting, and you do a great job of like showing love when one of your own is featured, but there's definitely is an inconsistency to the way that you engage with different posts, and so being mindful of that. It's also a great way to engage your alumni. So throwback photos always do well. People love to see photos from, you know, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and alumni love to share it. So maybe you adopt like, you know, a throwback Thursday, or you want to do like a flashback Friday, but reaching out to your alumni and asking them for their content, asking them what it is, and then maybe saying like caption this photo. But it is a super easy way to make alumni feel connected and following your social media pages, and it gives you great content that is like, it's always a winner. There's a a clear correlation between high engagement on posts when they're, I guess, old school posts, is what I'll say, to be a little kinder. But then I'm trying to think, other things that are always interesting, maybe not as interesting for college students, but interesting for your alumni. Like if you have really cool stats, right, about your show or how your group has grown, or if you go on tour, like how many cities you go to, using Canva to create like a really nice infographic. Right, if you're ever putting infographics together for sponsorships, or you submit anything for Platt, like repurposing that, that is something that outside organizations or outside like target audiences love to see. They love to see like how far you've come or how you're growing or how you're evolving. So sometimes you might have some interesting numbers and you're like, well, this might be interesting to someone, but like nobody's going to read a paragraph text. Like how can you use these free services like Canva and Pixlr to create some really great graphics? I think Platt House does a great job. And when hopefully we're back on campus, you'll see like the bathroom stalls. Like every time I use the bathroom in Platt House, they have that great year in review infographic. And I think, you know, not enough people take advantage of doing things like that. And then one last thing from the bullet points of photos and dimensions matter. And so making sure that if you are creating graphics for people to put on their Facebook profiles or banners, that you are not just giving them like a square photo that is going to get cropped, but websites like Pixlr give you those graphics. And so you can have different ones made for every type of, for every platform. It's worth noting that if you're going to be posting something to your Instagram feed, I know a lot of people love to have their photos be cropped to a square because then your grid looks really nice and like your head doesn't get cut off. But statistics actually show that the photos that are not square, the longer they are, the more they take up on your phone screen, the higher likelihood you are going to engage with it, whether it's share it, like it, comment on it. So while your grid might cut your head off, your head might get cut off in the photo when it's in the grid, the image itself is going to get more people's attention if you actually use the longer length photo. It's something that I have been testing out with like my poor dog. I have an Instagram account for her, like literally everyone else who owns a dog. And when I heard that, I started trying it out, and I actually could see a 10 to 15 like difference and a significant difference in comments in those photos. And so I just said, kind of like, screw the square. It's fine if like my grid itself doesn't look beautiful. What I care about is that when someone is scrolling on their screen, that they actually stop and look at my photo.
And I'll say also, when you're sharing those graphics to be shared, so for example, if someone sends Platt House a message and they're like, can you help put this on your platforms? Be mindful of like the type of file you're sharing. So I can't tell you how many times I'm like, I get a request to, put something on our social media and it's a PDF and I can't actually upload that PDF. So then I have to either ask the person to then send me an image file, like a PNG or a JPEG, or I have to just do it myself. And it doesn't take that long to do, but because it doesn't take that long to do, it's really helpful to sort of the person you're sharing with, if they're already getting the file ready to go as is. Additionally, it helps if you provide text, so an image file and text. That way the person sharing it doesn't have to like go in and figure out the text and have the possibility of misrepresenting or not saying exactly what you want. Just identify, this is the blurb I'd like shared, this is the text I'd like shared. That makes it good for you because it's the exact content you want, and good for the poster or the resharer because they know exactly what to push and they don't have to do any extra work with that. Can I just add 2 things? One being that I literally love Canva with my entire heart and soul. Like I am not I'm not, an expert graphic designer. I don't really know how to use Photoshop, but I create a lot of graphics for social media that I do. Canva literally could not be easier to use. There's a free version. It's so simple. You can just drag in colors and text and images. You can import images really easily. Like if you are looking to sort of up that social media game to have those types of graphics and you aren't, super
like well versed with editing and graphic designing, like try Canva. It's really, really the best. The other thing I want to say in terms of dimensions is something important to note is that there's a difference between Facebook event cover and Facebook cover photo. Those are two different dimensions. So just again, to be thinking about something, again, really great on Canva is you can type in the dimensions of post you want. Like you can literally write Facebook cover photo, Facebook event photo, Instagram square, Instagram whatever. But just, again, making sure that those dimensions are sort of what you want them to be. And then the last thing I want to say, sorry, a little random, you can put Instagram posts on your story. So I know a lot of times people are like repost, and I'm like, honestly, I don't know if it belongs on my personal feed, but I'm honestly always there to put it on stories. So I'll like put like an Instagram post on my story and like tag whatever. And like truly like your followers will then end up clicking on it, and that's getting more views for your group. So don't underestimate the power of putting it on your story for 24 hours. And it's really easy and there's no excuse not to.
And I just saw a question come up from Jayden. Thank you, Jayden, for your great question about posting on YouTube. Great questions. First is, what are the limits of what you can post regarding song and show rights? And the second is, how can you make your channel the first thing people say when they search you? So I just want to speak first to the first question about rights. I highly recommend you attend the Untangling Rights session as part of PACCon later today. If you can't make it to that, we will record it just like we're recording this session and share that out. So that should help provide some more insight into what can be posted, what can't, what we're covered as an educational resource, what we're not, all of those different things. And if you have any like specific questions, always feel free to ask. So you can reach out to like Platt House and we'll advise you on that. But I definitely recommend that session just to get more of those details in it. As far as making the first thing that pops up, I think one thing is to make sure, like Andrea said, you're active and you're posting content and you create like a robust page. I'm not sure about the actual just like searching process. Andrea, do you have more on that?
Yeah, so I can share a little bit about that. Is that me? No.
Yeah.
Do you hear background noise? No.
Yeah.
All right. So I like hate this phrase because this term because it's always constantly evolving, but like SEO, search engine optimization, which people think about specifically for search engines like Google, like how does my website show up at the top as the first one? But you can actually use that when you're thinking about sites like YouTube, because YouTube is actually the second largest like search engine site, even though we don't think about YouTube like we think about Google. People go to Google first, and then they literally go to YouTube second for a lot of how-tos. It's very important that you use all types of language, like you avoid jargon that people aren't going to know about. So the best example would be to say, like Platt House, like Platt, when you're creating your account page, it should say Platt Student Performing Arts House at University of Pennsylvania. And then when they're uploading YouTube videos, it would say like Platt House Performing Arts Council Conference, or like PACCon, and then in parentheses perform. When I search something, and that's why I think like, people in your house that are not involved in the pen mix every day are great test dummies. We write something the way we speak about it, right? We say PACCon and we know what it is, but my husband has no idea what PAC is, right? But if he knew, he doesn't know, he knows what Platt House is, but if I just said Platt in the sentence, he might not catch on to that. And so that's one of the most important things when you're uploading content. So I would find old videos and make sure that you have a nice, robust, like archives file to ensure that you have some content there. People engaging, liking your videos also helps you to the top. But unless your group has a generic name, it's much harder for someone who's like, I'm a beauty blogger. Like I want my video to show up first when I say like how to use green eyeshadow. Like how many YouTube videos probably exist of something random like that? If I'm saying, I don't know if there are other like stimulus children's theaters or other, Glee. If you're using Glee Club, you want to make sure it's like Penn Glee Club or Penn Band. And so the first thing you want to do when thinking about that is actually go on YouTube and search and see what pops up when you search those keywords. I think that's really important. And then you can actually, when you upload YouTube videos, you can use hashtags, and those help with the search engine. So I know hashtags are not really like much of a thing anymore, at least in our space of people aren't using hashtags to search things. Like if I try to use like hashtag like golden doodles of Philadelphia for my dog, like God, there's a million people posting with that. It's not really going to help me. But it helps my photo show up more. And so when you're uploading to YouTube, go hashtag crazy, not because people are going to be searching that hashtag and come across your video, but it will help your video in that algorithm show up higher. And so being smart about which hashtags you use, look at what you would consider your competitors, and see what they're doing as well. And that also helps.
Thanks, Andrea. I know we're actually kind of close to time, so we're going to go quickly through the slides coming up. But we want to make sure we cover all this content. If you have to leave early, we totally understand. Like we said, this will be recorded, but we'd love it if you stay with us on this journey if you can. So talking a little bit, about engaging students and alumni as content creators. So sometimes when you are the person charged with running the social media site or marketing or whatever it may be, it can feel like a lot to be the one generating this content. So you don't always have to be the generator. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can have other constituents, whether they're like within your group, handle some of that business, or kind of people from outside or who were once part of your group or have a vested interest in your group. So some of those tools we have listed here, like This Day in History and throwback posts, like Andrea spoke about earlier, are really engaging. And you can do that, or you can have other people, like Andrea said, caption this photo or share their content that you can then reshare. And then that's not just like good content you're sharing outward or generating, you're also engaging your audience and providing it, which makes them feel involved, which is a great way to go. Also, Hannah told me about this. You do like a day in the life of X. So that might be a day in the life. And we keep using like STEM and Funk because those are Hannah's groups. So we've been talking to her a lot about those, but a day in the life of Stimulus Children's Theater, or maybe a day in the life of the STEM social media manager. And then you can do, like we said later in this post, an Ask Me Anything. So what is that like? And you can kind of get people to throw their questions in case they might be interested in that board position later and want to learn a little bit more about what that looks like on a daily basis. There's also the option of resharing content that is already out there. Andrea is always teaching me, like I said. So another thing she taught me about was reposting on Instagram. When I first started using Instagram for Platt House, because I didn't have it in my personal life at the time, I was kind of mystified. It felt alienating to me. It seemed hard because of the no linking thing and the no sharing thing. But there's a free app you can download that's Repost, and you can use it to take a post that someone shared and then repost it on your own feed, or to your stories is even easier. And if you do it on your feed, it'll have like the credit from the previous post, so you make sure you're giving proper accreditation where it's due. You can also do takeovers, right? So you can have people who are alumni maybe come back, or maybe you let like your new group members do a takeover so that they can kind of present what it's like becoming a new member of this organization, or things that they like want to see and share forward. So there's lots of ways that you don't always have to constantly be like, oh, what am I doing now? What's the next thing? Like, engage other people who, you know, might have some fresh eyes or fresh insight and can provide additional content to share.
And a quick tip that you can go from the pages, give people instructions, right? They have to have an introduction, they have to have an ending, and a minimum of 3 posts in between. Don't just assume that they know what to do, giving them some guidelines and making sure to check. Sometimes people are in the middle of a takeover and they forget. And so it should be your responsibility that the day that there's a takeover happening, you're checking in, you're watching the post, you're making sure everything's good to go. If you're letting them actually take over, you can also just have them film everything a day earlier and then you upload them every couple hours. That's perfectly fine as well. Megan, why don't we skip email and listserv strategy, since we're running low on time and
okay.
Not many people mentioned email anyways, and there's good notes in the PowerPoint when you share it.
Right, so we will share out this video, so if you want to pause on this screen, the first example here is like a good one for your alumni, and then the second one here is a good example for more student focused, with some notes there like Andrea said. So I'm just talking a little bit so you can pause on this when you get the video if you'd like to.
Are we done at 50?
45, but again, the next session is quite a little while away, and it seems like people are still with us, so I think we're okay. Just a quick note here for email audiences. Again, just a few notes that could be helpful, especially while we're in this virtual environment. If you use a site like MailChimp, and this image we have here is from MailChimp, they always have time optimization that you can use that says, send my email at the best time, and it'll tell you, we think this is the best time for your audience, and then it'll send. They've recently added this idea called time warp, which not only sends at the best time, but sends different emails to people in different time zones. So if you're sending it, you know, at 5 p.m. in your time zone, because you feel like that's the optimal time on a Tuesday or whatever, that's going to get to some people at 5 p.m. And right now, especially with our students spread all over the world, it might get to people at 5 a.m. and they're not going to look at it then, obviously. So time warp helps hit people, you know, wherever they are, and thus helps with, you know, accessibility and the inclusivity of your messaging as well.
And something to think about with this that I can share a personal faux pas. When you're sending, if it's an important email or an email that's like about like ticket sales launching, think about, you know, does everyone need to get it at once, or do I want to maximize open rates? So I made the mistake in my last job of sending a very important press release and using something like time warp. And then there were people saying, I didn't get the email with the announcement of the new board of trustees. And I was thinking, I want the most people to read this, so I want to use this tool. But then I had people who were upset because they knew an email was coming. They were hearing from other people who were sharing this news, and they didn't have one, and they got it 5 hours later. And so that's also something important to think about is this something that regardless if someone's asleep right now or it's in the afternoon for someone else, everyone needs to get it at the same time for fairness? Or do I want to just put out an updated newsletter, like things that have been happening, and the most important thing is getting as high of an open rate as possible?
Absolutely. And I just want to draw one more note here about the line that says computer versus mobile is 50-50. So your audience is opening maybe on their laptop, maybe on their phone, which means you want to optimize the presentation of it for both. So there are different sites that actually do this that'll show you previews in those two different formats, but you can always also test it yourself. Send yourself a test email, look at it on your screen, your computer screen, look at it on your phone. Is something cut off on your phone? Does it look weird? Does it not resize correctly? Make sure you're maximizing that for both of those platforms as well. Okay, and then we definitely want to speak to accessibility, because this is super important and gets into the realm of legality. So just a couple quick notes again. When you're creating your graphics, you really want a pop and a wow, of course, but readability is super important too. So a prevailing wisdom is to keep to 2 fonts. You don't want like wild fonts kind of all over the place. It's distracting. High contrast colors. If you're doing like a light blue on a darker blue, make sure they're super contrast. So you just look at it, see if you can read it. Ask, again, like Andrea keeps saying, ask your parents, can they read it? Is it like jarring to them? Do they not want to look at it? Maybe you need to do a little bit of adjustment. Adding alt text or descriptive captions is really, really important. That is when you kind of embed an image or send it somewhere and you include text to describe it. That helps with screen readers, so people who might have low visibility or limited visibility and use screen readers that speak the words that they're seeing on the screen to them. If you have the alt text, it tells them what's in the image in case, you know, they can't fully take it in visually. So I love this graphic here because the first time I came across it, I did exactly what it said and it kind of blew my mind. So love that. It's just helpful to know exactly like where the eye is drawn in these kinds of graphics. Next, with videos, it's really important that you caption your videos. Again, that's a legal thing. Any video should have captions available on it. Some sites will do this for you. So if you upload a video to Facebook, you can ask them to add captions. It'll be an option. It'll say, do you want to add captions in the languages that are available? And you can click that. I believe YouTube does that as well. Microsoft Stream is a free service that does it. It's about 80% accurate. So you might want to go through and fix any issues that you come across. And then Rev is a paid service that our division is well behind. It's $1.25 a minute. And an extra 25 cents a minute if you want the captions burned onto your video. But that's a really helpful tool that we'll use. We're going to send this video out to Rev to get captions before we share it outwardly. So just to give you a sense of how that gets used. And we already talked a little bit about time zones. So accessibility and, again, that idea of inclusivity and equity across your audiences is really important. So just some final tips.
So things that we have mentioned over and over, but these are probably the most important, right? Like knowing who your audience is and who your current audience is and who your intended audience is. Both are, you can't neglect one or the other. Posting photos of real people. I know this sounds silly, but don't get, Canva offers lots of, not fake people, but stock photos. And so something that you can do when the next time that you are all able to come together, or if there are a few of you that are living together, like collecting photos, doing a shoot when time, or we are in a time frame that allows us to do that, just so you have stock images of different things is important. Keeping text short and sweet. I know that long form captions are now starting to pick back up again. There's a time and place for that, but making sure, you know, trying to keep things to one line is important. Constant posting, making sure you look at the times of when you're posting. I also think it's important to scroll test. So if you are posting something on social media and I have to scroll with my thumb in order to finish reading it, I'm not going to finish reading it. And there are different people who believe different things with email, that if I need to scroll more than two times or more than 3 times, that they'll stop reading. So if you are trying to put out important information, making sure to keep things short or having bullet points or highlighting things is really important. And then making sure in terms of feeds versus stories, that things in your stories, they disappear, even though you can, you know, save a reel on your profile. So things that are not going to be important, right? Like ticket sales close in 24 hours, great for your stories, maybe not for your feeds. And going back every now and then to your feeds, looking at captions, seeing if you want to edit something out. So if you said something with like link in bio, you know, 3 months ago, you might want to change that caption up. And in terms of clutter, embrace the white space. Every piece of your graphic does not have to be filled with design and wording. That graphic that Megan shared in the previous slide should be your best friend when you are creating anything that has text on it. So show posters and marketing posters. If you follow that guideline, like that is what most trained graphic designers, that's how they follow when they're creating things. And so if you're trying to get the word out with your graphic itself, following this will set you up for success. So thank you, everyone. Oh, sorry, Hannah, you want to just do your pitch about knowing your brand before we wrap up?
Yeah, no, I can just quickly finish. It'll take a second. So these are like 2 social media accounts I run, and I just want, I've like run one I've run in the past, one I run now, but essentially just pay attention to the colors and the content and the fonts and things like that. I think it's one of the most important thing with your group is that when somebody goes to your feed, they should get a pretty good idea of like what your aesthetic is and what you're getting across and what sort of the personality of your group is. So obviously like a dance group like Strictly Funk is going to look very different from like a children's theater company in terms of like bright colors versus not as bright, like fun fonts versus like, you know, different kinds of things like that. And so I just think pay attention, talk to your group. Honestly, like it should reflect your group, not necessarily even like yourself as a social media manager. Like it should be the essence of your group. So just making sure that everything you post is going towards what you want your group to be perceived as, the colors, the fonts, the images that you post are in line. As you can see, like with both of these, there's a lot of patterns, like in terms of highlighting different people from each of the things, like, you know, like using the same font for every single one, using the logo in like all of the photos. As you can see in both feeds, like the logo is used on pretty much every photo. So if you see that photo, you know whose group it is. And so I think creating a brand and like what your group is going to be known for and looks like is so important in distinguishing groups and kind of getting across what you want to get across from, you know, prospective students and people who are following your groups. So I think just really have fun with it, pay attention, and, you know, be critical with what brand you're giving off.
We are way over in our time, but if there was something we didn't cover, if there's any last minute questions, please drop them in the chat. Megan, I don't know if you want to go back to the first slide that had our email. So if anyone wants to email Hannah directly or myself, or I mean, I think they all have your email, but please let us know. We are happy to, you know, give you some feedback on your own group social media, or if you have specific questions because you're trying to launch something, we are I'm happy to continue the conversation long after PACCon is over. Thank you all.